Octavia Spencer woke up that morning feeling like the whole world was against her. She had been chasing her acting dream for years, but nothing seemed to work out. The city felt colder than usual, the sky heavy with gray clouds that looked like they would burst any second. She gathered her old portfolio, the same one she carried to every audition, and stepped out into the street. Her car, an old green sedan with a broken door handle and a missing hubcap, coughed as she turned the key. She whispered a little prayer under her breath, hoping the car would take her to the studio on time. She didn't know that today it would become the story she would one day share with the world. The day she met Keanu Reeves. On the highway, the rain began to fall, gentle at first, then harder. The wipers squeaked back and forth, barely doing their job. Octavia's fingers clutched the steering wheel. She felt a tightness in her chest, the kind that comes when you know you're down to your last bit of hope. When she pulled up to the studio gate, the guard looked at her with tired eyes and pointed at the no parking sign. She tried to explain that she just needed 5 minutes inside, but he shook his head. There was no mercy in Hollywood traffic, so she drove around, hoping to find a parking spot. But the streets were jammed, horns blaring, windows foggy with steam. The more she searched, the more she felt the clock ticking away her chance. Finally, she spotted a tiny space between the big black cars. She squeezed her sedan in, her heart racing. As she stepped out, the sky opened up. The rain was heavy, soaking her hair and clothes in seconds. She fumbled with her umbrella, but the wind flipped it inside out. People rushed past her, staring but not stopping. Her bag slipped from her shoulder, spilling headshots onto the wet sidewalk. She dropped to her knees, trying to save the pictures, her fingers freezing. She could hear people laughing from a distance, but she didn't look up. Her eyes blurred with tears and rain. Then she heard a calm voice. "Hey, let me help you." She looked up and saw a man kneeling beside her, his hands already gathering the damp papers. He was wearing a simple black jacket, jeans, and sneakers that were quickly getting soaked. His hair was dripping wet, but he didn't seem to care. He handed her the last of the photos with a gentle smile. "Don't worry, they're not too bad," he said softly. She stared at him, her mind struggling to place the familiar face. It was Keanu Reeves. She couldn't believe it. The Keanu Reeves was kneeling on a rainy sidewalk, helping her collect her headshots. She tried to say thank you, but her voice cracked. He looked at her with those kind eyes, the ones that seemed to look right into your heart. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, though she wasn't sure she was. He stood up and offered her his hand. His touch was warm, almost grounding. He helped her up and held his jacket over her head, shielding her from the rain. "Come on," he said. "You shouldn't be out here like this." She hesitated. She felt embarrassed. She felt small. But Keanu didn't let her feel that way. For long, he walked her to the nearest coffee shop. Inside, it smelled like roasted beans and fresh pastries. They found a small table by the window. He ordered 2 cups of coffee and a muffin. Octavia tried to protest, but he waved her off with a gentle smile. "Eat something," he said. "You look like you could use it." As they sat there, the rain beating against the glass, Octavia told him her story. She told him about all the auditions, all the rejections, all the nights she cried herself to sleep wondering if she was good enough. He listened, really listened, nodding every now and then, never interrupting. When she finished, she expected him to say something cliché, like "don't give up." But instead, he leaned forward, his elbows on the table, and said, "You know what? This town can be brutal, but you've got something special. I see it. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." She wanted to believe him, really, she did. But years of disappointment made her doubt every kind word. She looked at her hands, ashamed. "It's just so hard," she whispered. Keanu reached across the table and touched her hand. His fingers were warm, steady. "I know," he said softly. "But sometimes the universe tests us to see how badly we want it. Sometimes it sends rain so we can see who will stand beside us in the storm." That moment changed something inside her. It was as if his words gave her permission to keep trying, even when it felt hopeless. They finished their coffee in silence. When they stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but there was a sliver of light breaking through the clouds. Keanu walked her back to her car. He even waited to make sure it started. Before he left, he handed her a small piece of paper with a number on it. "Call my agent," he said with a wink. "Tell him I sent you, and next time it rains, don't let it stop you." Octavia watched him walk away, his figure slowly blending into the morning traffic. She sat in her car for a long time, the piece of paper clutched in her hand, a tiny spark of hope flickering inside her chest. She didn't know if it would work out, but she knew she wouldn't give up now. Not after meeting the man who knelt in the rain to remind her of her worth. That was the day Octavia Spencer's life began to change, one act of unexpected kindness at a time. Octavia Spencer sat in her old car for almost an hour, staring at the small piece of paper in her hand. The number felt like more than ink on a napkin. It felt like a second chance, but a little voice inside her kept whispering doubts. What if Keanu had just said it to be nice? What if she called, and they laughed at her? She felt the fear creep up her spine, that familiar feeling of being invisible, unwanted. But then she remembered how Keanu had looked at her, how he had shielded her from the rain with his own jacket. That was real. And real kindness doesn't come with false hope. With shaking fingers, she picked up her phone and dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She almost hung up when a calm, deep voice answered. "Reeves Talent, this is Marcus." She cleared her throat, her voice trembling. Hi, Marcus. My name is Octavia Spencer. Keanu gave me your number. He said I should call." There was silence on the other end. She felt her heart drop into her stomach. Then Marcus spoke again, his tone lighter. "Oh, you're the girl from the rain, aren't you? Keanu told me about you. You're brave, you know that." Octavia felt her eyes sting with tears again, but this time they were warm, soft. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus told her to come by the office that afternoon. Octavia could barely breathe when she hung up. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was still damp, her eyes swollen from crying, but under all that, she saw a spark she hadn't seen in years. She drove home, changed into her best outfit, a simple blue blouse and black pants, and stood in front of the mirror, practicing her smile. Her neighbor, Mrs. Evans, an old woman who always watched the street from her window, saw Octavia leave and called out, "You look pretty today, dear." Octavia smiled back and felt her shoulders straighten. When she reached the agency's building, she stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring at the glass doors. People in suits rushed past her, phones pressed to their ears, coffee cups in hand. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The receptionist looked up, gave her a polite nod, and pointed her to Marcus's office. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Marcus was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He shook her hand firmly and said, "Keanu doesn't just give out my number to anyone. He sees something in you. Let's see what you've got." They sat together for nearly 2 hours. Octavia shared her portfolio, her headshots, her resume, though it was thin compared to others. Marcus didn't judge. Instead, he asked her about her dreams, her favorite roles, the stories she wanted to tell. Every time she spoke, he leaned in, genuinely listening. She felt seen, like her words mattered. When they finished, Marcus stood and handed her a small stack of scripts. "These are auditions happening this week," he said. "Pick the ones you feel most connected to. I'll get you in the room. The rest is up to you." Octavia took the scripts in her hands, the paper slightly warm from being in his office. It felt like holding possibility, something she hadn't felt in so long. As she left the building, she felt the late afternoon sun on her face. She looked up at the sky, still gray, but a little brighter than before. She thought about how strange life was. One moment you're kneeling in the rain, losing everything, and the next you're being given a shot by one of the kindest men in Hollywood. Over the next few days, Octavia worked harder than ever. She stayed up late memorizing lines, practicing in front of the mirror, recording herself and watching every tiny mistake. She went to the auditions with her heart pounding in her chest. In every waiting room, she saw women who looked perfect, polished, confident, well-connected. But every time she felt small. She remembered Keanu's words, "Sometimes the universe tests us." Sometimes it rains so we can see who stands beside us in the storm. One night, after her last audition for the week, she sat in her tiny apartment, exhausted but hopeful. She made herself a cup of tea and curled up on the couch. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Her hands shook as she read it. "Call me, urgent." Her mind raced. Did she mess up? Did someone complain about her? She dialed his number. Her breath caught in her throat. "Octavia," Marcus said, his voice bright with excitement. "You did it. They want you for a callback. It's for a big role, a supporting character in a new drama series. They loved your energy. They said you felt real, like someone people could root for." Octavia felt her knees go weak. She sank to the floor, covering her mouth with her hand to stop from crying out loud. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Marcus laughed softly. "I told you. Keanu sees things in people. He's rarely wrong." That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know if she would get the role in the end, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel like an outsider anymore. She felt like she belonged in the rooms where dreams were made. She drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face, the sound of the rain tapping gently on her window, reminding her that even storms can bring the seeds of something beautiful. And somewhere in another part of the city, Keanu sat in his modest apartment, reading a script. He thought about the girl in the rain, her hands shaking as she picked up wet photos. He knew what it felt like to stand alone. He knew the power of someone believing in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. And he smiled, knowing he'd helped someone take one more step toward the life they deserved. The morning of the callback, Octavia woke up before dawn. The sky was still dark outside her window. She sat at the tiny kitchen table with a cup of coffee, the steam rising and warming her face. She read her lines again and again, her fingers tracing the words as if they were a promise. She thought about how far she'd come since that rainy day on the sidewalk. She could still feel the weight of her wet clothes, the sting of strangers, laughter as she scrambled to pick up her headshots. But above all, she remembered the warmth of Keanu's voice, how he had knelt beside her, a star who saw a stranger's struggle and decided to help. When she arrived at the studio for the callback, her heart pounded so loud she was sure everyone in the waiting room could hear it. She looked around and saw faces that made her want to shrink. Tall, polished women with perfect hair and confident smiles. She squeezed the sides of her script and whispered to herself, "You belong here." She said it again, softer this time. She pictured Keanu's face, his calm eyes that seemed to look right through fear and see the person underneath. When her name was called, she walked into the small room where the director, producers, and casting agents sat in a row. The bright lights made her eyes water. She took a deep breath. They asked her to begin. As she spoke her first line, her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. With every word, she let herself become the character, a woman who had lost everything and yet found a reason to keep fighting. There was pain in her voice, but hope too. By the time she finished, the room was silent. The director leaned forward, his eyes soft. "Thank you, Octavia. We'll be in touch." When she stepped back into the sunlight, she felt lighter. For the first time in a long time, she didn't walk away from an audition feeling like she'd failed. She felt like she'd given a piece of her soul to the room, and that was enough. As she waited for the bus, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keanu. "Heard you had your callback today. Proud of you." She couldn't help it. She laughed out loud right there on the sidewalk. People turned to look, but she didn't care. She texted him back, "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you." Days turned into weeks. Every morning, she woke up hoping for a call. Some nights, the fear would creep in again, whispering that maybe it wouldn't happen. But she didn't let it break her. She took a part-time job at a bookstore to keep her mind busy. Between stacking shelves and helping customers, she would run lines in her head. She talked to Mrs. Evans, who always waited for her on the porch. The old woman would say, "Child, I see a light in you these days. Don't let anyone take it from you." One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the buildings, her phone finally rang. It was Marcus. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Octavia, are you sitting down?" Her heart dropped. She sat on the edge of her bed, gripping the blanket. "Yeah," she said. Her voice small. Marcus laughed, a real, joyful laugh that filled her tiny apartment through the speaker. "You got it. They want you for the role. You start filming next month." Octavia felt the tears come, warm and unstoppable. She pressed her hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you're ready." Marcus replied, "Because this is only the beginning." After they hung up, she didn't call anyone right away. Instead, she sat in the silence, letting the moment wash over her. She thought about all the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, all the times she'd wanted to give up. She thought about the rain, the spilled photos, the stranger who knelt beside her. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Keanu." The next day, she asked Marcus if she could meet Keanu to thank him in person. Marcus laughed. "He's on set right now, but I'll make sure he knows you're grateful. Trust me, he'll want to see you soon." 2 weeks later, Octavia stood on the set of her first real show. The lights, the cameras, the organized chaos, it all felt surreal. She wore a simple costume, her makeup done by a kind artist who told her, "You've got the most expressive eyes, don't be afraid to use them." Octavia took a deep breath. Stepping into her mark, when the director called action, she became the character, a mother fighting for her son, a woman who had lost everything but refused to lose herself. Between takes, she found moments to stand quietly at the edge of the set, soaking it all in. Every sound, every word, every small detail felt like proof that she belonged. She knew there would be tough days, long nights, and critics who might tear her down. But she also knew she had survived worse storms, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she held on to the image of a kind man with wet hair and warm eyes, kneeling in the rain to pick up her scattered dreams. When her first day wrapped, she stepped outside to find a car waiting for her. She didn't know who had sent it, but she got in. The driver handed her a note. "Open this when you're ready," he said. The ride home was quiet, the city lights blurring past the window. When she reached her apartment, she sat on her bed and unfolded the paper. It was a handwritten note, in a familiar script. "Proud of you. Keep going. See you soon. Keanu." Octavia held the note against her chest and let the tears fall, not from sadness, but from the deep, gentle relief of being seen, believed in, and reminded that sometimes a single act of kindness can change everything. Octavia woke up the next morning to soft sunlight peeking through her window. It was her second day on set, but it felt like her first real day as an actress who belonged. She took the note Keanu had sent and tucked it into her bag, wanting it close. It was her quiet reminder that no matter what the day brought, someone out there believed in her. She stood in front of the mirror, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Keep going." The set was buzzing when she arrived. Crew members moved lights, sound guys checked equipment, and actors ran lines together. Octavia kept to herself, wanting to stay focused. But inside, a storm of nerves rattled her bones. It was one thing to be cast, it was another to prove. She deserved to stay. She didn't want to disappoint the people who gave her this chance. She didn't want to disappoint Keanu. As the camera rolled, she stepped into the scene. Her co-star, an older actor with a reputation for being tough, looked at her with cold eyes between takes. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just turned away. As soon as the director called cut, at first, she tried to ignore it. She told herself it was normal. Some people were just distant. But by lunchtime, the tightness in her chest returned. Doubt began whispering in her ear again, telling her maybe she wasn't good enough, maybe she didn't belong after all. She sat alone on the edge of the lot, picking at her sandwich when she felt someone sit beside her. She looked up and saw Maya, a young costume assistant who always seemed to have a kind word ready. "You okay?" Maya asked. Octavia forced a smile. "Just tired," she lied. Maya didn't buy it. She nudged Octavia's shoulder playfully. "Don't let him get to you," she said, nodding toward the co-star. "He's rough on everyone. He tests people to see who is heart. Just do you. You've got that thing, realness. People see it, even when they pretend they don't." Octavia's eyes stung with unshed tears. She laughed softly, brushing them away. "Thanks, Maya. I needed that. Maya grinned. Anytime. And by the way, someone dropped this off for you at the gate. She handed Octavia a small brown paper bag with a note attached. Octavia's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a simple chocolate muffin and a tiny slip of paper that read, "Energy Boost. Keep shining." She knew instantly who it was from. Her heart warmed, somehow, even miles away. Keanu seemed to know when she needed to feel seen, when she needed a gentle push to stand tall. She held the muffin close for a moment before taking a bite. The sweetness filled her mouth, chasing away the bitterness of doubt. The next scene was harder. She had to cry on cue, her character breaking down after learning her son was missing. As the director called action, Octavia reached deep inside herself, digging for every buried pain. Every moment she felt alone, every time she thought she'd lost everything, the tears came, real and raw. When the scene ended, there was silence on set. Even her tough co-star looked at her differently, a spark of respect flickering in his eyes. He nodded once before walking away, and that tiny gesture felt like a door cracking open. Over the next few days, Octavia gave the role everything she had. She stayed late, asked questions, took notes. Every night when she got home, she found a small message from Keanu, sometimes just one word, like bravo or breathe, but each one landed like a warm hug, holding her up when she was too tired to hold herself. One night, after an especially long day, she sat on her couch staring at her phone. She wanted to thank him properly, to tell him how much his quiet encouragement meant to her. She typed and deleted a dozen messages before settling on a simple line. "How do I thank you for all this?" She didn't expect an answer right away. He was busy filming a movie in another state. But a few minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Just be you. That's enough." The next morning, as she walked onto set, she felt different, stronger. She realized that Keanu hadn't just given her a break. He'd given her the courage to believe she deserved it. And that belief made all the difference. When the director praised her performance, when the crew smiled at her, when her co-star finally shared a joke with her between takes, she didn't shrink away. She stood a little taller, shoulders back, heart steady. One evening, as filming wrapped for the week, Maya pulled her aside. "Word is, they're rewriting parts of the script because they want more of you. You're good, Octavia. Really good." Octavia's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" Maya nodded. "Dead serious. You're making waves, girl, and everyone's noticing." Later that night, Octavia sat by her window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. She thought about all the nights she had felt invisible, all the times she had wanted to disappear. And now here she was, not just being seen, but being valued. It was still hard to believe sometimes, but she held onto it anyway. She whispered into the night, "Thank you, Keanu. Thank you for reminding me I matter." And in that quiet moment, she promised herself that one day she would do the same for someone else. Kneel beside them in the rain, pick up their scattered dreams, and remind them that they were never alone. As weeks turned into months, Octavia's world shifted in ways she had never imagined. The small supporting role she had landed became one of the most talked about parts of the show. People on set started treating her differently, not like an outsider, but like someone who belonged, someone whose talent could not be ignored. Her co-star, who once barely spoke to her, now sat with her between scenes, sharing stories from his early days in the business. Sometimes he would nod at her after a tough scene and say, "You're good, kid." Those 3 words felt like medals pinned to her chest. Despite the long days and late nights, Octavia felt alive. Every morning she woke up with a purpose, a fire inside her that the world could not snuff out. And yet, through it all, she kept Keanu's little notes close. Every time self-doubt tried to sneak back in, she would reach into her bag, find one of his scribbled words, and breathe easier. One evening, after filming a heavy emotional scene, Octavia sat alone on the soundstage. The crew had packed up, the lights were dimmed, and the hush of the empty set felt like a church. She thought back to that rainy morning when she was nothing more than another face with a dream. The memory of kneeling on wet pavement, her dreams scattered and soggy, now seemed like a story that belonged to someone else. She pulled out her phone and typed a long message to Keanu, telling him everything. How hard it was, how beautiful. It was, how much it meant to her to know he still believed in her. She didn't expect a reply that night, but hours later, as she was drifting off to sleep, her phone buzzed with a short voice note. She pressed play and heard Keanu's calm, steady voice. "Hey Octavia, you did this, not me. I just showed up in the rain. You kept going when you could have stopped. Remember, you have that power now. Don't forget to help the next person who needs it. And take care of yourself, okay? Proud of you." She listened to it 3 times, tears slipping onto her pillow. His words didn't just make her feel seen. They made her feel responsible, in the best way. She promised herself she would not waste the gift. One Friday afternoon, as filming wrapped for the season, Marcus called her into his office. His grin gave everything away before he even spoke. "They're talking about writing your character into the next season as a regular," he said, sliding a new stack of papers toward her. "And that's not all. I've had 3 casting directors ask about you this week. They want to see you for lead roles." Octavia's breath caught in her chest. The girl who once sat crying in a broken car, praying for a break, was now being asked to lead stories, to stand at the center instead of the edge. She felt like her feet might float off the ground, but deep inside, she also felt the weight of staying true to herself, the same girl who once felt invisible, the same girl who picked up wet headshots from the sidewalk while strangers walked by. After Marcus shared the news, he leaned back in his chair and asked, "Do you want to call Keanu, or should I?" Octavia smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. "No, I'll do it. I want him to hear it from me." She stepped out into the evening sun and dialed his number. It rang only once before she heard his familiar hello. She told him everything, her words tumbling out like a waterfall, the new scripts, the chance to be a series regular, the auditions for bigger roles. When she finished, there was a pause on the other end. Then Keanu laughed softly, the kind of laugh that made her heart feel warm. "See, you did it," he said. "I'm just glad the world finally sees what I saw in the rain." They talked for nearly an hour, swapping stories about set life, their favorite moments, and the people they'd met along the way. Octavia asked him why he'd stopped that day to help her when he could have just walked past like everyone else. His answer made her eyes sting with tears. "Because once, I was that person too," he said. "I know what it feels like to be invisible, to feel like nobody cares. Sometimes, it just takes one person kneeling beside you to change everything." Octavia didn't say much after that. She just let the silence say what her heart felt. She knew then that this was more than a story about kindness. It was about seeing people, really seeing them, and lifting them up when they're too tired to stand alone. A few weeks later, her show's finale aired. Her character's journey touched millions of people. Fans started recognizing her on the street, stopping to tell her how much her performance meant to them. Some said they saw themselves in her, the woman who fought back when life tried to break her down. Each time someone told her that, she felt a spark of warmth inside, like a light that would never go out. One night, after a fan stopped her in a grocery store to thank her, Octavia sat in her car and cried, not from sadness, but from the beautiful truth that she was no longer invisible. And in her heart, she made another promise. She would always remember the rain, the kindness, and the man who reminded her that the smallest act of help could change someone's world forever. Octavia stood backstage, just beyond the heavy curtain, her heart pounding like it did on her first day in front of the camera. Tonight wasn't about playing a character. Tonight was about telling her story. She had been invited to speak at an event celebrating acts of quiet kindness in the industry, the kind of kindness that changes lives but never makes the headlines. When they asked her who inspired her most, she didn't have to think twice. Her answer was one name, Keanu Reeves. She stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. The audience fell silent as she stood at the podium, the soft hum of anticipation filling the room. She held the microphone with steady hands, but inside her chest, her heart thudded like it was trying to remind her how far she had come. Years ago, she began, her voice gentle but clear. "I was just another struggling actress in this big city. I thought I'd missed my chance. I thought maybe my dreams were too heavy for my tired hands to carry. Then one morning, on a sidewalk, in the rain, I dropped my headshots, and while people walked past me like I didn't exist, one man stopped. He knelt beside me. He picked up my dreams with his own hands and made sure I knew I mattered. She paused, looking out into the crowd. Some people leaned forward, eyes wide, waiting to hear more. That man, she said, her voice catching for just a second, was Keanu Reeves. He didn't just help me pick up some wet photos. He gave me the kind of hope that sticks to your bones even when life tries to wash it away. As she spoke, memories flooded her mind. The rain, the taste of cheap coffee shared in a corner cafe, the first phone call to Marcus, the first audition, the first time she felt like she belonged. She remembered every note, every tiny muffin, every simple word of encouragement Keanu had sent her. All of it had built a bridge strong enough to carry her across her fear. He probably doesn't even know this, she continued, her smile softening her words. But every role I play, now every story I tell, carries a little piece of that moment. He reminded me that being seen matters, being kind matters, and that sometimes when you feel like you're drowning, someone will show up and say, "Here, hold on to me." When she finished, the room erupted in gentle applause. She stepped away from the microphone, feeling lighter than she ever had. Behind the curtain, Marcus was waiting for her. He handed her a small card with a grin. "Someone sent this for you. It came just before you went on stage." She took the card and unfolded it. Inside, written in that familiar handwriting, were four simple words, "So proud of you." She laughed, her eyes brimming with tears that felt warm on her cheeks. It still amazed her that Keanu, with his own busy life, found these quiet ways to remind her that she wasn't a lone dot in the months that followed. Octavia's career continued to grow. She won roles that let her show every shade of who she was, her strength, her softness, her stubborn hope. She found herself on magazine covers, in interviews, in rooms she once only dreamed of. Yet, no matter how bright the spotlight got, she always kept a small corner of her heart humble and real, because she knew that her true beginning wasn't the first role she booked. It was the day someone knelt beside her when no one else did. One evening, years later, Octavia sat on a park bench under a soft drizzle of rain. She watched people rush past, umbrellas held high, heads down. Then, she noticed a young woman sitting on the curb, her backpack spilled open, papers floating in the wet wind. For a moment, Octavia just watched. Then she felt that same pull in her chest, the same tug Keanu must have felt for her once. She stood, walked over, and knelt in the puddle beside the young woman. She picked up the scattered pages, her hands getting wet, her knees damp. When the girl looked up, confused and embarrassed, Octavia smiled. "It's okay," she said gently. "I've been here too. You're gonna be just fine." And as she handed back the last page, she felt a small warmth inside, the beautiful, quiet power of passing kindness forward, one act at a time. In the end, she understood the truth Keanu had shown her. The world is full of storms, but as long as one person is willing to kneel beside another and help them stand again, hope will never drown.